Well, good afternoon. I want to welcome you to another episode of the Fireplace Show. This is a show sponsored and produced by CBC Support Group. And what we do is we try to present information about fireplaces, chimneys, gas logs, appliances, all types of hearth questions. And we base this on questions and answers that consumers need in order to make proper buying decisions. So every week on my show, I like to have a guest come on, and this week is no different. Our subject matter today is what we call in the industry the fireplace changeout. Some people call it a rip and replace, a retrofit fireplace, but we're going to talk about how do you replace fireplaces in your home that are installed into walls. So my guest today is a guy who grew up in this industry. His parents started in business in 1978. They came from IBM and started as chimney sweeps. From there, they expanded to a retail offering and a distributorship. They're distributing grills, hearth appliances, and his name is Josh Kelly. So Josh, anything you want to tell them about your background, why you're working in this business besides your parents were there, and what your present occupation is in the business?
Well, other than the obvious nepotism, I run the day-to-day operations of the business. What I essentially do is put the systems in place that make us operate, as best and as efficiently as we can.
Right, and I believe you're a graduate of the University of Tennessee. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
Because every time you call, if you get Josh's voicemail, I believe the University of Tennessee fight song plays, the school song plays on your voicemail, doesn't it?
Yep, sure does.
There you go. Okay, so let's start out here. We're going to talk about fireplaces that are what in the industry we call factory built, and we've got other names for them. They can be prefabs, they can be zero clearance. So Josh, let's start out. What is a factory built fireplace? Remember, we are talking to consumers today, just like would come into your showroom.
Okay, so a factory built fireplace is quite essentially is a fireplace that really is made off site. Instead of the traditional fireplace that we're used to saying that's brick and block and mortar, that's literally constructed, cut, hauled, and brought there, piece by piece. A factory built is literally made in a factory on an assembly line, and then it's brought to the home and final assembly is done.
Okay, so when did they start building factory built fireplaces, or what we call zero clearance? And we're going to go into that term, man. When did they come in? When did these first roll out in the United States, Josh?
It'd be 1952.
1952. That's when they first rolled out. Now, they really didn't get popular then, but we've got a term that's called zero clearance. And a lot of people don't know that. But Josh, why do we call these appliances zero clearance? And are they truly zero clearance to combustible materials?
So the original first generation, for the first 5 years they were built from 52 to 57, was actually built as a true zero clearance, meaning you could have wood touching the box, which is generally not a good idea. Airspace is a great insulator. So that was kind of a hard thing to break from the industry, and people have been calling them that since then.
Right. So at this point, so an interesting saga goes on here. These were listed by Underwriters Laboratory from 52 to 57 as a zero clearance product, which means the wood could touch the fireplace and the chimney for this 5-year period of time. And how were they able to get this way was because the testing lab was taking the data from the manufacturer, which was Mr. Thoman, the inventor, and they put it into play. Because the Underwriters Laboratory had suffered a fire and their test lab actually burnt down, so they couldn't test the fireplaces at that point. So in 57 was when they retested. Now, Josh, you've worked with some of these older fireplaces, and one thing I think we need to share with people is these older fireplaces from back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s were actually, in most cases, much heavier than the factory-built fireplaces we see today. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. They're a much lighter gauge. They've tested to the point a lot of times they don't use insulation. So yeah, they've dropped a lot of weight. They've changed the design. Well, they're much more compact. They used to have these great big domes on the tops of them. That's all gone.
Right. So what had the reason for this was is after World War II, what there was found ways to build homes at a lower cost. And with the factory built fireplace, what we were able to do was eliminate the use of a footing. We also were able to eliminate having a brick mason do the installation. So factory built fireplaces came out to count, as part of the baby boomer market after World War II when housing was really taking off in the United States. So, Josh, when we talk about factory built fireplaces, we're talking about units that burn different types of fuel. Would that be correct? Or are they just wood?
Nope, they actually they don't make a pellet one anymore, but they used to, and they make gas as well. Gas is probably being the more popular choice these days.
Right. So wood is what we traditionally think of, and many of the wood burning factory built fireplaces, you can actually install a gas log inside of that fireplace. Would that be correct?
Yep, a vented gas log generally.
A gas log, right. Most of the time, most of the older factory built fireplaces, and this is a question that comes up a lot, are really not listed for vent free gas logs to be installed in a lot of the factory built fireplaces out there. Is that what your position is at Tri County Hearth there in Waldorf, Maryland?
Yeah, we won't do them at all. But in order to do it, you got to be able to find the original OEM parts that would convert that fireplace over, and those things just aren't available after more than a couple years because they're accessories versus parts, so they don't have to keep manufacturing them like they do the actual parts of a fireplace, just like parts on a car. Like they don't have to make the chrome package anymore, but they still have to make the brakes and the alternators and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good friend of mine just joined, so she's going to learn something about fireplace today. Appreciate you being here, Lynn. So we're going to teach you a little bit about fireplaces today, sweetie. So going from there, so in the factory built fireplace, you just talked about something which is the difficulty of obtaining parts. Is this a really big challenge on a lot of these fireplaces, Josh?
Yeah, especially on wood burning fireplaces, because they would make a small change, and then they would only make that fireplace sometimes for 1 year or less than that. So then getting panels or dampers or anything like that can be a real challenge.
That's it. So, and these units also have refractory boards in them. They have caps that are made. So this is a big industry thing. It's an ongoing, we'll say, debate, which is using OEM, which is original equipment manufacturer's product. You can't find for a lot of these old fireplaces. Would that be true?
Oh, that's absolutely true. It's a conversation we have every day here in the store.
Yeah. When the factory built market first started back in the 50s, from my research, it showed that maybe we were putting fireplaces factory built in about 2-3% of new homes in the 40s and the 50s. But this has taken off. What do you think the percentage of fireplaces that are factory built are used in new construction today, Josh?
Probably 50 to 70, if I had to guess. Track homes, and they're usually putting in the cheapest thing they can because the builder gets a certain amount of money, really, in his total home assessment. No matter how nice the unit is or how cheap it is, in the appraisal, he gets the same amount of money. So for him, it's a checkbox. He can say, "I'm going to advertise a fireplace." So that's what it comes down to when you have these, especially we call them tract homes or developments built. You'll see just the lowest quality ones there is.
Okay, well, Larry Cookingham, he's a chimney sweep that works up in Poughkeepsie, New York for Hudson Valley, and he just put a question up. He's saying a common question from a customer is, can we install a wood stove insert in my fireplace, talking about factory builts? And I'm sure you get that position. I know you've even taught some classes on these for us.
Yep.
So tell me what your thoughts are when Larry asked that question so consumers can hear this in this show, what we advise them to do.
So our policy is absolutely not. The main first reason, like a prefab, especially the newer ones, the UL standard for them only requires, I think, like 70 for the weight of the fireplace, only hold 70, 100 pounds, something like that. I don't know what the exact rating is, but it's certainly not the weight of the stove. On your old stoves back in the 80s that had a smoke chamber, you could actually bring a chimney liner, down and meet it up to a stove. Now there's no smoke chambers. They just, things just don't line up. The flue collar of the stove doesn't line up with the flue outlet of the prefab. Your chimney liners aren't rated to go into prefab chimneys. Most of the time, you have to take the refractory panels out of the fireplace in order to get the stove to fit, even the smallest stoves. And every manufacturer requires that the refractory panels to stay. There's a litany of other issues.
Correct. And usually what we're telling people is, the fireplace manufacturer does not list this product for a wood stove to go into it. And we tell them and advise them, you need to go to the manufacturer's installation requirements for the fireplace and in their manual. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, but everyone's always in contradiction between the manufacturer of the fireplace and the manufacturer of the appliance you're trying to put in. Okay. I can point out issue after issue between the two of them. If like one manufacturer says you have to use the liner kit A, which requires fresh air or air to come around the liner, but then the manufacturer says no, stuff that air, stuff that area so there's no airflow.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Okay. So just that alone, could cause a failure because the liner manufacturer says, do A, and the manufacturer of the appliance is telling you to do B, then those are in direct conflict.
So this will bring us to our subject matter today, is what we call the fireplace changeout. And this is something that in my retail and service business, I started doing back probably in the mid 80s. Josh, how far back do you think Tri-County goes as doing fireplace changeouts?
Probably 25 years.
Probably 25 years. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about a fireplace changeout, what we're doing is we are actually taking that fireplace out of that wall. Would that be correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So in order for people to understand what we're talking about, I'm going to play a video that's going to run about 2 minutes. And this is of Josh's crew actually doing a fireplace. They actually are taking out one fireplace and putting in another one. So that's going to come on now.
This entire changeout took place in one full day. We always start out with protecting the home with drop cloths. We start by removing the slate surrounding the fireplace and are now beginning to remove the existing fireplace. At the same time, the venting system is being removed from outside the home. The fireplace is removed from the home, along with the remaining venting system. Now we begin our retrofit process of the installation. We start reframing the fireplace opening and preparing the hole for where the new exhaust is going to be. We begin insulating the fire stops and installing a vapor barrier inside the fireplace cavity. This will help with cold air infiltration into the home. A new fireplace is set into place, attached to the framing, and the venting is being installed. The fireplace is being set up. Gas and electric are being retrofitted to fit the new fireplace. Start to close in the new fireplace. Test fire of the new unit. New slate and trim are installed and cleanup begins. The new fireplace is running and we are returning the furniture to its home. This install is complete. We removed an inefficient wood-burning fireplace and replaced it with a high-efficiency 40,000 BTU gas fireplace, complete with a realistic wood log, comfort control valve, accent lighting, and thermotactic remote with an energy-saving electronic pilot.
So the guy that narrated that made one mistake, but it was already out, which is it wasn't a thermotactic remote, it was a thermostatic remote. So you'll notice so controlling the fire and all that from it. So Josh, we just changed in that particular job right there, when you just did that you didn't have to paint anything, did you? It looked like you pulled the fireplace out. Tell me a little more about that.
Well, I mean, obviously we did a measure the old fireplace before. I believe we ordered just a new piece of header black slate in advance, so we were prepared, and we were able to just pull the old fireplace out, put the new slate package in, and be done in a day.
Right. Is that a normal installation? Is a lot of them? Is that what it takes is a day, and you're in and out, and the people have a new fireplace that night?
For a well-trained crew that does this every day, most of the time, if you're not doing stonework and you're just doing like a marble and mantle job, my crews can do that job. It can go anywhere from 7 to 10 hour job.
Okay, so why did the customer come to you and make that purchase? Were they wanting gas logs? Or tell us a little more about why didn't you put a set of gas logs in the fireplace they had?
Actually, that customer actually had gas logs before, but they were decorative, inefficient logs. One of the things is when people are talking about this process of literally cramming an insert in, what's the finished product going to look like? Because with that install, it looks like that product has been there and was originally intended to be there. When you put an insert into a prefab, again, you're cramming some things in there. You've got weird overlaps, and there's just another litany of issues. But you get a much better finished product. You get a higher efficient product. You get a much bigger viewing area out of it. You get all the features and functions out of it. So you really just, it looks like it's supposed to be there.
Yeah. Chuck Janelle just added up. I put his comment. You were selling them a better lifestyle, something that was going to provide. So let's go into what that direct vent is, because you took wood out and you went to a direct vent gas. Am I correct? And it looked like you had vented this out the rear. Did I see that properly?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me why, let's tell them a little bit about what a direct vent is and why did you choose that over a vented gas fireplace, Josh?
Well, a traditional vented, really a vented fireplace that we're talking about, we call natural draft or B-vent, are usually a lower end product in this day and age. And they're not usually heater rated appliances. And they pull combustion air from inside the home. So especially as homes are newer, you have what they call it the LEED, L-E-E-D, I believe it is.
Correct.
Green certification. Then you have energy codes. So these fireplaces just don't have the air to breathe like they used to. And then that's going to lead to, you're not going to be able to use your appliance, and then you're going to be really unsatisfied with it.
Okay. Good. Keep going, man. You're going great.
Okay. With a direct vent fireplace, it actually pulls all the combustion air in from outside. You don't have to go through the expense of adding 25, 30 foot of venting system. I literally just need 3 pieces of pipe. Especially in the modern appliances, it comes as a kit. I just order one kit, makes it very simple. You put in, 1 piece of pipe. But it just allows for a more efficient, cleaner installation, usually less expensive.
Okay, if I heard right, the narrator said that was a 40,000 BTU unit. So if somebody has a house, and that's a neat thing about a direct vent insert, like our direct vent fireplace, because I have a 40,000 BTU unit in my upstairs area. How big a home is that going to heat in the event of a power failure, Josh? Can we heat homes with these things?
That one's big enough to do 2,000 square feet if you're, if it's well insulated, if your floor plan allows for it.
Okay. Does it have to have a blower running to do that, Josh? And power outage, so we're still going to get the same amount of heat?
You're going to lose some because you're not going to have the convection of the fan blowing air into the room, but you're still going to have, you can still live in that space.
Okay. So, Josh, one of the reasons that people would change out a fireplace would be because they want to change the fuels. Would you agree?
Yeah, they want to change the fuels. They're a lot of times the original was poorly installed, so there may be water leaks. We find a lot of time there's no insulation in that cavity
Okay.
back there. A lot of times, and then it's cold and it's drafty, and people just aren't really happy with that.
Right. And in the fireplace industry and the chimney service industry, one of the things that we find is that a lot of these chases, which is what it's housed in, when you see a fake chimney on the side of a house, maybe made out of vinyl or it could be made out of brick or stone, but we call them chases. A lot of these leak water, Josh. So what if the chase is leaking water, what does this do to the fireplace inside of that chase?
It ruins it. You start to get holes in it over time.
Okay, so the water entry will actually, we find fireplaces that have outlived their useful lifespan because of water entry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, much shorter lifespan.
Yeah, because one of the things that we do within our companies, is we actually train people in fireplace changeouts in our training lab up in New Cumberland, Pennsylvania, which some of your guys have been to that training before on how to do these type of things. So as you go through this, a lot of this is going to be from the fireplace may just not be meeting their criteria. Or how often, if you're in the chimney inspection world that you're into, because you run a chimney service business, how often do you find that water has caused massive issues with a factory built unit?
Probably at least 30% of them, minimum. Okay. You really don't know. You don't know until you. And when we do these changeouts, at least 1 in 3 has completely rotted out chases. We'll go through and we'll find the floor of the chase is rotting out, and we're having a, additional expense to the consumer because no one could see it, that their floor was rotting out.
Okay. So common questions from a consumer, and they probably ask you this. Well, I've already got a chimney inside my chase. Can you use the same chimney with this new fireplace, Josh?
No, that's never the case. When these fireplaces are built, they build their own chimney systems solely for these fireplaces. So we always use the analogy in our shop, you can't put Ford brakes on a Chevy truck. It's the same thing. You can't use that. This is not a universal chimney. It's one size fits one. That's it. So you are having to replace the venting system as well.
Right. And that's one of the biggest things. And that's why if you're considering doing this, you really got to seek out an expert, to be honest with you. You're not going to find somebody. Are you going to find somebody at a big box store like a Lowe's or a Home Depot, Josh, that can help a consumer spec out this new fireplace?
No, it takes a year of training almost for someone to point out all the little things, having been through all the little things, we call them tuition, all the painful learning experiences, to really understand what's going to happen each and single every time.
Got you covered. Julie Dent said that was a great analogy you just using that right there. So as we go into this, Josh, again, if you were going to take someone today and they came to work for you today and training them to do this type of work to change out and understanding fireplaces and venting systems and everything that we involve in, how long would it take you to train that person, Josh?
Takes about 2 years.
Takes about 2 years. So how do you train them?
Well, it's a lot of read manuals, manual. I'm always telling the guys, read the manual. We also do NFI training. We're going through that again right now. So it helps the installer best understand the manual, things like that. But the guys have to be able to understand carpentry, gas. We have to get them gas certified. They have to do carpentry. They have to be able to change out an electric outlet, do siding work. There's a lot of little skills that they need in order to properly do that one, just to be able to send one crew out there.
Yeah. Aaron, I appreciate your thoughts and your good wishes there. It really means a lot to me, and I'm really happy to be out doing this as quick as I am after what I've been through. So thanks for your thoughts there. Julie then just put up, you got to read. So We also have some certifications out there in the industry. So where would you tell people to be looking at certifications of installers to come out and do this, Josh?
So the main one is for us is NFI, the National Fireplace Institute. They have what they call a core certification, which is mandatory for anybody, for me, because it all talks about the things that I just said. Read a manual, read a manual, read a manual, and read the clearances, because safety is the number one aspect of what we do. I tell them on day one, there's a lot of things I can forgive, but if you're going to risk burning someone's house down, you'll be out the door faster than you can even think about it.
Right. And it's also a big challenge for you to train people just to work on your showroom floor. Would that be correct? And how to help people spec these products in?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'm there now all the time. I got Glenn, who's been with me 20 years, who's done many of them. But it usually takes almost both set of eyes for us to really look something over. We ask questions of each other back and forth. Did you check this and did you check that? And then we have some checklists that we've developed over time too, to help with that.
Okay. Another common question is, many of these, we talked earlier about the chase, and the chase is we're going to call it the fake chimney, or the housing on the outside of the house where you don't see the pipe in the fireplace. It may be made out of vinyl. It could be made out of wood. It could be made out of stone or brick. But on top of it, you have what's called a chase cover, and this is the weather-tight system. Can you usually reuse the chase cover, or does a consumer need to buy a new chase cover when they do a fireplace changeout?
So that's a great question. Oftentimes I'm underbid by people not putting that chase pan over, and then I come back and find, we get called up for a normal service call to find out that all the electronics have rotted out in a fireplace. I've seen that a few times. These chase covers, if they're doing the job right, it's a custom fit deal on these to keep the water out. It's literally something. Yes, it's several $100s to get a good one done, but they come with a lifetime warranty. They're custom fit. They're not going to fail you. If I've seen them try and reuse them, and then it's always something ends up happening. They tape them together, or they try and glue it, and eventually just the wind blowing back and forth enough time breaks the wind in them, and voila, you got water in there.
Yeah. So what would be some of the things, if we got a consumer that's listening to us and now we have piqued their interest and they were going to come into your showroom, what could they bring you in the showroom that would help you spec out the new fireplace for them, Josh?
So the first thing is pictures. I've never said there was enough pictures. I need pictures up close, from 5 feet away, as much as I need pictures from across the room, from 20 and 25 feet away, because I need to see what's around the fireplace as much as I need to see what's in the fireplace. I need to see what's on the outside of the house, get an idea of the length of run, how wide. I want to know how wide that box is. Sometimes, with the change in fireplaces, we've had I call them personally widescreen or linear fireplaces. And people want those, but those boxes in what we call them tract homes or pre-built homes weren't made for that. So sometimes you're really checking clearances 3, 4, 5 times to make sure that appliance is really going to fit in that home. So outside, how wide is the outside? Because we can usually figure it's a 2x4 wall. You figure you can take at least 8 inches off that. If you can measure inside the marble or slate, the width and the height of that, we can probably get you there. And it's a good idea to know what you want for a finished product, because that sometimes will drive the fireplace. If you are looking for the biggest, largest full view fireplace, that's going to have different clearances than a traditional fireplace with louvers. The one with a widescreen linear is going to have different clearances. They have what I commonly call them TV kits on them now, where you can hang a TV just a few inches above the fireplace. So those are all kind of things on what your overall goal is, and think just beyond getting the fireplace in, but think down the road 2-3 years, because once we've got everything ripped out, it's pretty easy to start over at that point.
Right. So another thing would be, how do you get them to let you know what they visualize? Because there's a lot of different looks. This could be a totally different look in the fireplace, correct?
Yeah. So that's usually the first question I ask. I said, well, a lot of people, and believe it or not, they love their existing mantle and marble. And that kind of surprises me, but that's, if that's their goal, then that usually limits them to 2-3 fireplaces in my shop. And I say, hey, do you want A, B, or C? Here's the deciding factors. Of course, we have like 16 fireplaces burning, I think, right now. So we're able to walk them through, show them, and be like, okay, do you like this or this? This one has LED lighting. This one has halogen lighting. What are your deciding factors? What are your goals? A lot of times people just want an update because it's the only appliance in the house that hasn't been updated. They've already bought HVAC systems, dishwashers, refrigerators. It's the last appliance to get upgraded. So sometimes they just want the new bells and whistles. Sometimes they're cold because it was a very low heat output unit, and now they're getting older and they're getting less tolerant to the cold, and they want more heat.
Yeah.
So those are your factors that we walk through. Is what is your goal with this?
Right. So if someone brings you pictures of their existing fireplace from inside the home,
Mm-hmm.
and the dimensions of the mantle, the distance between what we call the legs coming down and the bottom of the mantle, the header of the mantle, that kind of stuff like that, bringing you those pictures and those dimensions, and then walking outside, taking a picture of the chase, taking a picture towards the top. They really don't need to go on the roof. But if they would measure how far that chase sticks out the wall, does that help you spec it in, Josh?
Yeah, I can get you, for the most part, we can get you within probably $500 on the spot in the showroom if we know what your goals are, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If you need stone work or something like that, we'll want to come out there. There's a lot of little things that go into stone, like how far are you walking from each cut, how big, how tall is the ceiling, things like that. So, but if you just want to keep your existing mantle and marble, I can pretty much get you within even less than $500, $100 or $200 usually.
How hard is it not to break that marble or slate, Josh?
We have a disclaimer on that. The guys, it's been a while since they broke one, but it's, my neighbors are a perfect example. They're getting a new fireplace for me, and Felicia goes, it's been broke since the day we moved in. So, and sometimes, marble's a natural product. You get a vein in it, and, the installer went to town with liquid nails. Like, you don't know what it's going to take to pull that off. They're pretty gentle. They take, they use taping knives and things like that to get behind it. But I don't know what they installed it to. I don't know if it's on plywood versus drywall. That's another scenario where it's even stronger bond than versus drywall.
Yeah. Well, as you know, my son does installation and changeouts. He's been doing it for years. And he called me one day, Josh, because he had a house that was only about 3 years old. And he was doing a change out because they had put B-vent fireplaces in, and because of a pressure issue, they didn't work, and he was putting in direct vent fireplaces. Well, when he opened the wall up and pulled the fireplaces out, they had a water leak, and it actually rotted out the OSB board under the fireplace. How much often do you find rot inside of those chases like that?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to when you were talking about changing the chase pan out earlier. It's 1 in 3 that we find that kind of rot in there.
Do you find many violations of manufacturer's installation instructions when you're doing the tear out? Is there Romex wire, which is electrical wire, touching the pipe sometime, or the fireplaces, or you find debris on top of the fireplaces?
So we will find some debris. One of the biggest ones is the missing of fire stops that we see in this area. That's the biggest one, is that fire stops just seem to be, they were never put in.
Okay. So let's tell people what is a fire stop. Remember, we're talking to consumers, so tell them what a missing fire stop is and what that could result in, Josh.
So it's nothing more than basically a flame retardant. And believe it or not, doesn't have to be non-combustible. Usually they're plywood with we call them like a thimble or something around it just to kind of space it off the wood. But in the event that there's a fire, your chase makes for a great funnel in the event of a fire. And the idea is to cut that funnel in half and give you an extra 5-10 minutes to get out of the house, and is what you're hoping for. Because otherwise you got a great big cylinder, 25, 30 foot tall, full of combustibles, that's just going to take off. So the idea is just to slow that down and not give it kind of that rocket engine in there.
In today's world, don't a lot of codes and standards, are they calling that, is that fire blocking in the IRC today, which is International Residential Code?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so you may see it as called as fire stopping or fire blocking, but what it is to keep it from becoming its own chimney where the fire can just go straight up and can cause, mind you, a lot of problems. So Josh, let's tell everybody how to find you if they're in the Waldorf, Maryland area and they're listening. How do they find your showroom and what's your website and all that kind of stuff?
So our website is www.heatwithfire.com. And we're obviously in Waldorf, Maryland, just a quarter mile north of Walmart on the back road behind Walmart, 2-story building, red and black awnings.
Yeah. And y'all been, and I'm repeating again, your mom and dad started this business, was it 1978? Am I correct in that?
Yeah. And it was for Xerox, not IBM. They were working.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said IBM. I should have said Xerox. That's correct. So anyway, so you basically were raised up in this business, probably had no idea when you were growing up that you were going to be working in here and running this business one day. You actually didn't have that wasn't your primary decision coming out of college, was it?
No, I was going to be a big time accountant, but turns out I don't like sitting on a desk all day.
I don't think in numbers, you don't really like numbers that much either, do you?
Oh, numbers are fine. They're easy. It's just, I just don't want to, I have a touch ADD, probably a little bit more than that. So repetitive tasks are difficult for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, brother, I appreciate you joining me today on here. I think we've shared some great information on here. And so you were, Josh, one thing, let me bring this up. Next week, I have a guest that's going to be on here, and he's going to be talking about pressure issues with fireplaces and performance and blower door testing. He's BPI certified. So how big a challenge is that today? Because this is actually the reason why some people have to change out a fireplace to direct vent. Is pressure issues a problem for fireplace operation in today's world?
It's becoming more and more. That's why, when our guys go through training, about the amount of air an open fireplace uses versus like a wood stove. It's more than, I think it's at least 10 times as much air, if not closer to 20, somewhere in there. So the amount of makeup air you have to have for a wood stove versus a fireplace is tremendously different. And that's a good way to solve your draft issues.
Right.
One of the reasons why you do direct vent, why direct vent is such a popular option, is because then you don't have to worry about house pressurization issues because the unit is sealed. It is a sealed combustion unit. So you don't have to worry about those things.
That's it. Well, brother, I appreciate your assistance today. And like I said, join us next week, next Tuesday. My guest will be Jim Ray from West Texas Venting and Chimney Solutions. And he is a BPI certified blower door test technician. We're going to be talking about where pressures affect your fireplace and why you may need to be looking at converting to a direct vent. So, Josh, appreciate you being here. Anything you want to add before we end this today?
No, sir. Thank you.
Hey, appreciate it, brother. And with that, Josh and Jerry, we're